if you are sharing one of your stories from your experience, from your career, from maybe even your personal life, not only are you illustrating the message that you want to deliver, but you're also allowing the person who's listening to it to get to know you better.
Welcome to Think Deeply, Speak Simply, the podcast that explores the art and science of business communication. Sponsored by Prezent, the AI-powered platform transforming the way professionals share ideas and tell their stories. And now, here's your host, Rajat Mishra, CEO of Prezent and passionate advocate for clear and impactful communications.
Steve Jobs once said, "The most powerful person in the world is the storyteller." Our guest for this episode is Kindra Hall, and she has made it her life's work to help individuals and organizations harness the persuasive power of stories. She's a best-selling author of books like Stories That Stick, Choose Your Story, Change Your Life, an acclaimed keynote speaker, and the former chief storytelling officer at Success Magazine. Kindra has helped many Fortune 500 companies, entrepreneurs, and professionals transform the way they communicate, turning dull presentations into unforgettable narratives and for passive audiences turning dull presentations into unforgettable narratives and passive audiences into engaged believers. In this episode, we'll explore the science and the soul of storytelling. Whether you're leading a team, pitching an idea, building a brand, or just want to become a more compelling communicator, this episode will help you tell the kind of stories that don't just stick, they move people to action. So Kindra, welcome to Think Deeply, Speak Simply. It's a pleasure to have you on the show.
So thrilled to be here with you, Rajat. Thank you for having me.
So you've built a whole career around the power of strategic storytelling. So tell us how you got into it and what about storytelling appealed to you?
Well, as you can ask anyone, like, what is it? How did you get into it? And it could be a really long story. So I'll give you the high level points. I would say the first story that I ever told was actually an assignment for fifth grade, like our fifth grade English class. We were supposed to choose a children's book, take it into a third grade classroom, so younger kids, and then read it for them. And it was kind of the first opportunity for us to practice public speaking, which looking back, it's a visionary effort there. But I remember walking into the classroom, my slot to read this book was right at the very end of the day. The third graders were out of control. They were bouncing off the walls. I knew they weren't about to listen to me read them a book. So instead, I put the book down and I just told the story. And I have to tell you, it was in the first 2 sentences, I held those third graders in the palm of my hand. Like I could have made them cry if I wanted to. I could have sold them something if I wanted to. Like they were entirely captivated. And I was 11. And even then I realized that something really powerful was happening here. Now, of course, you don't start your career at 11 years old, but I did seek out other opportunities to be telling stories because it also turned out for me, it was a way to have my voice be heard. It was something that I was good at. So all through my younger years, I was telling stories. I told stories competitively. I ended up telling stories at the National Storytelling Festival in Jonesboro, Tennessee, which, yes, there is one of those. I was a senior in high school. And that's when it really started to click for me. The power of stories to unite all different people, all different ages from all across the world. People would fly in to come to the storytelling festival, sit under these enormous circus tents, and just listen for hours on end without moving, whether it was 100 degrees or freezing cold and raining, listening to these stories. I went on to graduate school. I studied storytelling in organizational socialization. That was my master's thesis. And then naturally, I went into marketing and sales and communications. And that's really where things started to turn for me, because this art, I think at that time, I thought of it as an art. This art that I had fallen in love with and become so well versed in for the entirety of my life was completely lost when it came to marketing or sales conversations. Here I was, we're talking about facts and figures and features and benefits and price reductions and all of this standard business chatter, when really it was the stories that were going to hook people. It was the stories that were going to, get the final contract across the line. And that's when I realized that maybe this thing that had always interested me through my entire life actually was a skill that needed to be taught to other people. And that's what I did. I left that job. I started taking on individual clients, whether they were other high profile executives who needed to give powerful presentations. I was working with nonprofit organizations, and eventually it turned into traveling across the world, delivering keynote speeches and writing books about strategic storytelling in business. And now I get to be here with you.
That's amazing. I didn't know there was a national storytelling festival. Sounds unbelievable. It's amazing you took something you fell in love with as a child and built a career around it. So let me ask you a question. In the business world, Kindra, many people are more serious, like you said, the chatter, facts and figures. So how do you think storytelling in our personal lives and storytelling in business, how are they different? Like, what is business storytelling?
I think it's so interesting because you mentioned the storytelling festival, which really was. They were just telling stories for human enjoyment, for entertainment purposes, for that feeling of connection and even nostalgia. And yet, when we think about storytelling in business, we're still looking for those same things. We're looking for connection with customers. We're looking for messages that resonate, that don't just meet someone at the eye level, but go within them and stay with them. And so I think actually the problem is we think that business storytelling is different than personal storytelling, when really they're the same thing, right? You're telling a story to a friend because it's an experience that you want them to know about, or maybe you're telling a story to one of your children because it's a lesson you want them to learn so they don't have to learn it for themselves. And in business, we're telling stories, let's say you're in sales, so that someone can experience the benefit of your service without or before having to experience it for themselves, because they have to want it before they can say yes to it. And how do you get them to want it? Well, you need them to want to feel the way they could feel after they have it. How do you do that? You tell a story. So back to your question, I think if there is a difference, maybe our end goal is a little bit different with business storytelling. We have a clearer objective. Now, sometimes it maybe is just to connect. If you're a leader in your organization, you need your team now more than ever to understand you as a person so that they can trust you, so that they feel like your values are aligned. But when it comes to business storytelling, if there is a difference, it's the importance of the teller knowing the message they want to deliver and the importance of that message to the person in the audience. however that audience may be, right? Maybe it's in front of a boardroom, maybe it's a pitch deck, maybe it's over a Zoom call, whatever that medium is.
Yeah. No, I love that point that they're essentially the same. I love what you said, not just the eye level, but go deeper. But the stakes might be different and the audience is different. Can you share an example, Kindra? It might be good for us to just hear, share an example about someone who had some misconception about business storytelling, and when you worked with them, maybe one of your clients, or how that unfolded and they came up with something that went below the eye level and touched the heart.
Yeah, I can give you a couple examples. So one is I was working with a CEO who wanted to differentiate himself, his company, in the marketplace. And so we were working together. This was many years ago now. And he wanted to do it with storytelling because he knew storytelling is here's how we're going to differentiate ourselves. And so I said, okay, what makes you different than anyone else? Any of your competitors? And he said, first and foremost, everything we do with integrity, which is great. It's good that he knows his values, but I'm sure you can imagine all of his competitors would say the same thing, that they're doing business with integrity. And now part of the problem that was just an intro question. Okay, that's not the kind of question that's going to elicit a story. So I asked a follow-up question, which was, so what does this integrity look like? When have you seen it in action in your business? And he said, well, everything we do with integrity, as if saying it in bold made it matter more, right? We use we use this jargon. We have our terms that we always go back to. And just saying we believe in excellence or innovation or customer obsession, whatever these high level concepts are, those are not stories. Now, with a little bit of effort, we were able to find an incredible moment in this CEO's career. And in fact, it was right when he was launching his company. And he had the opportunity to sit down with a potential client. He sat down, told him how he was planning to do business differently. And if this client said yes, our guy was in business. And the client leaned in and said, I have $100,000 of cash in this briefcase. If I give this to you now, will you guarantee me kickbacks in the future? And the young CEO was trying to build a business built on integrity, explained once again that wasn't how he was going to do business, thanked the man for his time, walked away. The gentleman called him back later that afternoon and said, you're what our industry has needed for a very long time, and they've been doing business together now for 40 years. But that is a story about a moment when integrity was important, where they could illustrate that value. So there's one example, but let me give you another one that anyone listening, I want you to keep your eye out for. It happens a lot in marketing, especially now, since people are catching on to storytelling as a strategy. Okay. And I think one of the mistakes is we think that just by putting the words "our story" on anything, whether it's a slide or on a website or even on the back of packaging, that it makes it a story. So for example, I'm going to give you two examples. My husband just came home from the grocery store yesterday. He had a package of granola, and on the back it said "our story." And it's a female-founded granola, and it said, my name is such and such. I believe in quality ingredients and natural essences, and that's what is in this bag. Now, if I were to read the back of that bag to my kids at bedtime, would they say that's a story? No, they would revolt, right? They would demand that I pull a different book off the shelf. So that's not a story. But now I want you to think back, or you can even go look at any bag of Siete Family Foods packaging. Now, Siete Foods is the food brand that is like taking the world by storm. They were recently bought by PepsiCo, so maybe now their packaging is different, which would be a travesty if you ask me. But when they were just getting started, on the back of their package, it said, "We are a tight-knit Hispanic family who loves food. It's a part of our family tradition." And then one day, one of our sisters of our family member of 7, Siete, discovered that she had a gluten intolerance. And it meant that she was unable to eat any of our favorite family foods. Not wanting to be left out of the traditions, she got to work developing recipes, trying to use alternative, whatever grains or whatever it is that she could eat and still enjoy all of our family celebrations. We ran them past Abuela. She said they passed the test, and now you have Siete family foods.
Wow.
They sold to Pepsi for, I think it was $1 billion. I need to take a look at that. But that is a story. You can right there pick, and I didn't do it justice. I mean, if you actually read it on the package, but you have a character, you have like her plight. You can feel that she's sad that she's going to miss out on this essential part of her cultural and familial heritage. And there's a reason that brand exploded. And there's a reason, I mean, it's undecided what's going to happen to this granola, but even take a look at any packaging now. Anytime it says our story, I want you to go back and look, read it and say, oh, if it starts with, "We believe in the highest ingredients," it's not a story. If there's characters in it, if there's emotion, now you're onto something.
That's so true. I mean, now that you're saying it, I think our story is the thing to put on in a lot of packaging and many company websites. But you're right. This doesn't sound like a story. Right?
Yeah.
It's great. I love that. Love that example, Kindra. So in your book, loved it. Right. In your book, you mentioned the 4 types of business stories.
Yes.
Right? So the founder story, value story. So it would be great if you can just tell us how do you come up with these 4, and what are those 4, and when should each type of story be used from action impact? Yeah.
So, I mean, these 4 types of stories were developed over the years of working in business, whether it was when I was in sales and marketing and I was telling founder stories. I was sharing a lot of value stories and a lot of purpose stories. And then as I went on consulting and working with different organizations, it kind of came down that there were like 4 story types that you needed to be good, that you needed to find and be able to tell. So number 1 is and they're in no particular order. Value story is a story, obviously, that expresses the value. These could be considered these are going to be primarily your sales stories. So it's the value of a product, of a service. Maybe if you go down deeper, it could be the value of a particular feature. It could be the value of your approach that's different from your competitors' approaches. But value stories are the stories you tell when you're trying to communicate and establish and make people feel the value that you bring, so that they say to themselves, that's what I need. Because when it comes to decisions about value, buying, saying yes to initiatives, we make those decisions first based on how we feel. Second, we back it up with the logic. So that's an essential story, as I call it in the book. So your value stories. The second story that I identify in the book is the founder story. And again, the stories that I shared with you in the previous example, they were all founder stories. And when they're done right, I mean, Airbnb nailed their founder story, and you can see what has happened over time. But the founder story is really the story of how the company, the product, the service came to be. However, this does not mean that if you work for a company, you don't have an opportunity to tell a founder story. And I want to break this down into two parts. So there's two ways to look at this. Number one, make sure you know the company's founder story. Why is the company here? What was the great idea or the big struggle that the founder was trying to solve? Make sure you look that up. Make sure you seek that out so you can tell that story. But number two, you can also think about the founder's story in terms of your founding. Why are you here in this role? Why did you choose, if you work in a company, to join this team or this company versus another one? It's a way for you to, and establishing your personal brand is essential for every individual within a company. So when was the first time you heard about this company? When was the first time you knew this is where you wanted to work? Those are also available to tell as founder stories. The third one is the purpose story. And these are more, if we were to go kind of generalize it, these are more like leader stories. Like, who are you? Why are you here? What are the principles? What are the values of you as a person? Maybe it's the values of your team. Maybe it's the values of the organization. Purpose stories are used to align and inspire people within an organization. And fourth are customer stories. Now, technically, a customer story is like a subset of a value story, but they're important enough that I felt like they deserved their own. I mean, I was writing a book. They deserve their own section of a book. But the importance of not only getting like 4-star reviews, but for the people who you work for, or, like you do this work on behalf of, who have experienced the benefit of what you do and what you're about, to tell their full story, not just, oh, so-and-so is great. I had a wonderful experience, 5 stars, right? Where were they before they said yes to you? What made them think about saying yes to you? And what is now possible because of their work with you. One company, and I mentioned them in the book Stories That Stick, as I'm talking about customer stories, is the brand Native. And at the time, it was Native deodorant, which I don't know, it's kind of this like upstart natural deodorant. Most natural deodorants were disgusting. They didn't work, but Native was kind of coming up like grassroots. And one of the things that they did is once you bought Native and you had it for like 3 days, they would send you a follow-up email with a link that said, what made you decide to try Native? What had you been using before? And what has, now that you've used this for a couple of days, what has your experience been? And I think it was probably just a Google form, and people would fill this out. And one woman wrote like, my granddaughter was over and she left it out on the bathroom counter and I smelled it and it smelled so good. And so I swiped a little bit on and I couldn't believe. And so then they took each one of these stories, put them up on their website until they had hundreds of thousands of customer stories, not just 5-star reviews. And now it's not even Native deodorant. Native is an entire hair care line. It can be found on Target and all the big box stores because they took the time to collect the full story from the customer and then use that as part of their marketing strategy. It's impressive. So those are the 4 stories. I'm sorry, Rajat, I do not give a short answer. This is not my...
Yeah, no, but that was great. And I love the stories, Kindra, that you shared as well. And I'm just thinking back to how we talk about our company and how other companies do. I think definitely there's a lot of opportunity. So your book is Stories That Stick, right? And so what makes a story stick? So what are those special traits and characteristics? And on the flip side, what are some examples of stories that don't, and what are they doing wrong?
The mistakes. Yeah. So I love this question. And very much like there are 4 key stories or essential stories that every business needs to be able to tell. What makes a story stick is the framework that you use to put it together. Mm-hmm. And then B, there are 4 essential components that every story needs to have, which is This is something that we researched at our team, and the results were, they were profound in that the more of these 4 essential components you include, the more persuasive, the more memorable, the stickier your story is. So I'll break it down real quick. The framework is 3 parts. It's normal, explosion, new normal. What was, what happened, and what is now as a result. You heard me mention that when we were talking about native deodorant. They asked, what were you using before native? That was the normal. What made you decide to try it? The explosion, where the decision was made. And now what has your experience been? That's how our stories fit together. Normal, explosion, new normal. And then the 4 key components are, number 1, we need an identifiable character. So, and it doesn't need to be, like if your story starts our company, a company is not an individual character. Okay. Maybe the M&Ms in M&Ms can be considered characters, right? But think about the Siete Foods example. They were talking about the one sister who had a gluten intolerance. Okay. Like having an identifiable character is essential. Number 2, authentic emotion. And this can be done very simply. And I think it's important to note that it's authentic emotion, not over the top emotion. I think that's one of the reasons that people end up not telling stories is they think the stories aren't dramatic enough. The simple emotion of not being able to participate or eat your favorite foods, that's emotion that we can all relate to, right? Yeah. So it's authentic, everyday emotion. 3rd is there needs to be a moment in your story, an opportunity for people as they're listening to the story to zoom in and sit right there next to you. So think back to the first story that I told you about me telling a story in a 3rd grade classroom. Now, Rajat, let me ask you, did you join me in that 3rd grade classroom?
I was there next to you, Kindra.
So where were you were you standing next to me in the front of the room? Were you sitting where were you sitting when you?
I felt I was like next to you. Yeah. And I could feel your excitement, and I could feel what you were going through.
And isn't that just having that little bit? And now I could have said, I told lots of stories all throughout when I was young, but because I put you into that classroom, you co-create the story with me so that you're right there in it, and it will stay with you longer. And then lastly, the 4th component is specific details. And this does not have to be, you're not trying to write the next great novel here, but just 1 or 2 things that someone can, as our brains are listening to it, we can latch on to. So, for example, if you are a tech company, I was working with a tech company, and one of the things that happened often to their customers is they would be in the office at the end of each quarter, extremely late at night, and everyone was ordering either pizza or Chinese food. And so when they were telling one of their stories, they said, we remember the long nights where we'd be sitting in that boardroom with the fluorescent lighting surrounded by boxes of either pizza or Chinese food. Now, 2 things I want to point out here is having those little details in there will make the story stick in someone's mind, and it's your opportunity to be extremely strategic. If you know that your audience, and one of their problems is that they're wasting their time late in the office, in a boardroom, and eating fast food, and this is the problem your company solves, then by including the detail of Chinese food or pizza boxes, you're also saying, without saying, I understand you. I know your pain. I get you. So it ends up carrying, it's a pretty powerful addition. So those are the 4 key components. And I would say if someone goes wrong, obviously, with telling a story, it would be not following that framework or not including those 4 components. But I think really where the biggest mistake happens is trying to stay is staying too broad, to not recognize that really small moments, really small interactions are actually some of the most compelling stories. A moment when a decision was made, a moment when you realized the problem was solved, a moment when you learned an important lesson. And really all you're doing is taking these small moments and breathing life into them versus trying to paint a really big picture of a concept that's already so intangible. You're just going to make it more abstract.
Wow. That was great, Kindra. Because I'm just thinking back to, our own lives, or my own life. You really think of that moment where a decision was made. And like you said, in a story, you breathe life into that moment. And we do that in the business world. We try to stay very generic and high level and use these big words, right?
Yeah.
One question I've heard quite a bit from many of business folks I talk to is, "Hey, I'm not a good storyteller. I'm good with numbers. I'm dry." So, what do you say to those people who say, "I'm not good at storytelling"?
Okay. So I'm sure if you're watching, you can see my face. So some of my very favorite people to work with are the super dry ones because you have an advantage. If you're naturally very charismatic and outgoing and a showman or woman, people are going to it'll be great that you can tell a story, but if you are one of the very dry, serious, technical, I work with a lot of companies that are in data or financial CFOs. If you are one of those the dry people, when you tell a story, people are so blown away by the simple fact that you did this. Like the gain right there is so much bigger than if they're like, "Oh yeah, so-and-so is already like a really charismatic guy, so we were expecting this." So the upside for you is much greater. But here's to answer the question. One of the reasons I decided to pursue a career as a storyteller, which, my dad questioned me. It did not sound like a legitimate career, right? Was because of my frustration that people think that storytelling is a talent and not a skill. So yes, there are some people who maybe it will come more naturally to them, but it is something that can be learned. And I chose to write this book and teach about this methodology because I wanted it to be something that is formulaic, something that is accessible to anyone. So if you are someone who doesn't consider yourself a great storyteller, and maybe you're basing that on your personality or the fact that that was just never really your thing, here's my advice to you. Number one, it is going to require a little bit of extra time and effort on your part. Just anytime you do something new, it takes some getting used to. It takes some practice. Make sure you give yourself that time. So often, let's say presentation examples are easy because we all have to at some point in our work give a presentation or deliver a message. We focus so much on the information we're going to include, on the size of the font, on all of these things, which are all important, right? You have to look professional. Spend as much time, or at least set aside a period of time to work on the story you will tell. And it only has to be one story. So here's what I want you to do. You have your message, you have the thing that you're tasked with communicating. What is the one thing that you need them to walk away with understanding? The importance of that. And then I want you to find a story from your professional career, from your previous experience that illustrates the importance of that key message, and then work on telling that story. And customer stories are a great place to start in these situations. So maybe you had an account where you had to work through whatever it is that you're going to advise that they do. But But I would definitely say give yourself ample time to identify what that key message is, number one. And number two, find a story that illustrates that message. And then make sure you practice it.
Yeah. I love what you said. It's not a talent, it's a skill. And it is a misconception. Many people feel it's a talent and you can work on it. So let me ask another question. On the other side of the coin, Kindra, now with AI, many people are using AI to come up with stories, come up with presentations, come up with videos. And one of the things I've heard is, hey, look, I don't need to get good at storytelling because I can use AI now to create stories for myself. So what do you say to those people who are relying on AI for their storytelling?
I think that one of the things that makes storytelling and telling your stories, or even stories that were told to you by another human versus AI, is that you get a dual benefit in that the person you're talking to, and I can't imagine there's many instances in business where it doesn't matter how the person you're talking to feels about you. All business is relationships, right?
Yes.
So we're all trying to form these relationships. How do you form relationships? The shortest distance between two people are the stories that we share. So if you are sharing one of your stories from your experience, from your career, from maybe even your personal life. Not only are you illustrating the message that you want to deliver, but you're also allowing the person who's listening to it to get to know you better. The essence of who you are, how you think, how you approach problems, your ability to reflect on yourself. These are all essential things for building relationships, to establishing trust, to enabling open lines of communication. Now, you're not going to hear me say that AI is terrible. I think one of the ways that you can use AI when it comes to storytelling and, let's say, presentations is, and whoever you're using for AI, they probably know you pretty well by now, right? They know some of who you are, what you're about. You can say, I am giving a presentation where my key message is this. Develop a few prompts for me, knowing this about my professional career, knowing this about my personal passions, prompts that will help unlock stories that are within me. And so then AI can say, think back to, let's say you were an athlete, like what were some of your best coaches? What was one of the biggest mistakes you ever made in a game, right? Like they can ask you professional questions. You can say, I want you to keep it all within the realm of my professional career. Use this accounts or whatever. And they can say, what exactly happened? What was the biggest challenge that you faced with this account? What that will do is help you to unlock the stories of what happened within you. So you can be telling your own stories, but one of the biggest barriers for telling them is we think, I don't have any stories. I can't remember them. And so using AI to give you prompts, much like I gave that CEO, I said, when is a time you've seen integrity in action in your business? And all of a sudden, stories started coming back. So use AI to give you the prompts that will unlock the stories and experiences so that you can tell them.
Yeah. It's a really interesting perspective that AI is a co-pilot to discover and unlock the stories that are within you. They are still your stories, not the AI stories, but the AI is helping you unlock and discover them. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Right? So, Kindra, let's move to one of my favorite parts of the podcast, which is the quickfire round.
Ooh, okay. I'll try to be quick.
five questions. I have not told you these questions before. So I'll ask the question and a word, a phrase, or a sentence as the answer. So whatever comes to your mind, just let me know. Okay?
Okay.
Let me know when you're ready.
Ready.
Okay. Question one. What is one word you would use to describe the art of communication?
Co-creative.
Okay. How is AI changing the way we communicate?
A lot and not at all.
What is a common communication myth you wish people would unlearn?
That communication is about what comes out of you instead of what comes out of them.
Okay. If you could give one piece of advice to someone preparing for a big presentation in corporate America, what would that be?
Clarity. Be very clear on the message you want to deliver, and then find a story to be able to illustrate that.
Okay, great. And ending on a personal note, what is something, Kindra, you wish you knew about business communication when you started your career?
That it really is okay to be yourself.
That's awesome. That's great.
Yeah.
That's great. Thank you, Kindra. That was awesome. So this wraps today's episode on the power of storytelling to inspire action, build connection, and drive results. We've explored why stories matter in business, how to craft them effectively, and the common pitfalls so you can communicate in a way that truly sticks. Kindra, thank you so much for sharing your insights and expertise with us today.
Oh, thank you. I loved being able to share them with you. I can't wait to hear the stories that get told as a result.
Yeah, and I had a blast myself. It was great. Before we go, Kindra, where can our listeners connect with you, follow your work, or learn more about you and your books?
Yeah, so all of my books are available wherever books are sold. So you can find them on Amazon. My website is kindrahall.com. I do have it says like a newsletter, but it's actually a weekly storytelling videos that come out to give more tips and tricks for storytelling strategies. And then, of course, LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram /Kindra Hall is where I spend most of my social media time. And I think that's it. Otherwise, I'm in New York City, so you might see me in Central Park sometime.
Awesome. Thank you again, Kindra. It was a blast. Next week, we'll continue exploring the art of communication and leadership with another incredible guest. Until then, let's think deeply and speak simply. See you next time.
Thanks for tuning in to Think Deeply, Speak Simply. This episode was brought to you by Prezent, your secret weapon for brilliant presentations. Visit present.ai to transform how you communicate. Until next time, keep thinking deeply and speaking simply.